a child abandoned by the world, expressing their deepest pain through art. A mafia boss feared by everyone, cold as steel, discovers it by chance. Can this painting born from pure struggle and raw emotion awaken a heart that's been lost to darkness for decades? One piece of art could change everything. A child's art, a mafia boss's heart. What happens when these worlds collide? You don't want to miss how this story unfolds. So make sure to subscribe now and join us for every twist and turn. This is the story of Zalica, 10 years old. No parents, no home, just the streets of Lagos and a dream that refused to die. Most children her age worried about homework. Zalica worried about survival, where her next meal would come from, how to stay invisible to the gangs, whether she'd make it through another night. But Zalica had something that kept her alive, something more powerful than fear, stronger than hunger. She had art. When you have nothing, you learn to see treasure in what others throw away. Zalica didn't have canvas or proper paints. She had the city itself. Crushed cans became color. Charcoal mixed with water became ink. Discarded fabric became brushes. Every wall became her canvas. The city that abandoned her became the very thing that allowed her to speak. And speak she did. Not with words. Zalica learned long ago that words were useless when no one listened. But through her art she screamed. She cried. She hoped. Each painting told a story. The woman with empty eyes, her mother, who left her at a hospital doorstep. The outstretched hands, her desperate search for connection in a world that walked past her daily. The faces full of pain and longing. Everyone who ever looked through her as if she didn't exist. Art wasn't just expression for Zalica. It was survival. Proof that she existed. That she mattered. She worked obsessively, between begging for food, dodging trouble, finding shelter. Sometimes she painted for hours without stopping, as if the images inside her would consume her if she didn't release them. Other street children noticed. Some brought her materials they found. A crushed blue bottle became the color of sky. Rust from old metal became the color of dried tears. Together, they created beauty in a place designed to crush it. Her latest piece was ambitious. A child herself, holding a wilting flower. But from that dying flower, stars were being born. Her message to the universe. Even in death, there is creation. Even in ending, there is beginning. This neighborhood wasn't just suffering. Yes, there was poverty. Yes, there was struggle. But there was also life. Music drifting from windows. Mothers singing to children. Old men playing checkers on upturned crates. The community protected Zalica in small ways. A fruit vendor who accidentally left bruised fruit where she could find it. A grandmother who let her sleep in her doorway on cold nights. A teenager who scared off dangerous men. But kindness couldn't shield her from everything. This was a neighborhood controlled by forces bigger than compassion. Forces that saw children like Zalica as either assets or obstacles. Yet through it all, Zalica kept painting, kept creating, kept believing her art meant something. That somewhere someone would see it, really see it, and understand. She had no idea that someone was coming. His name was Chamir Nkosi, but nobody called him that. To the world that feared him, he was simply the iron. An iron he was. Hard, cold, unyielding. 43 years old and ruler of the largest criminal empire in West Africa. Drugs, weapons, protection rackets. Everything illegal worth doing, he controlled. His office sat on the 20th floor overlooking the city like a predator surveying prey. Clean lines. Expensive taste. Calculated perfection. Nothing like the filthy streets below. Nothing like the world he crawled out of decades ago. Chamir wasn't born iron. He was forged that way. Beaten into shape by a father who drank and destroyed everything he touched. Hardened by streets even crueler than the ones Zalica now wandered. Tempered by watching his mother die. Coughing blood on a dirt floor because they couldn't afford medicine. He made a choice at 15, standing over her grave. Never again. Never again would he be powerless. Never again would he beg. Never again would he feel. And he kept that promise. He climbed over bodies, literally and figuratively. Learned that loyalty was currency. That fear was more reliable than love. That the only person you could trust was yourself. By 25, he ran his own crew. By 30, he controlled half the city. By 40 he was untouchable. He had everything. Money beyond counting. Power beyond measure. Respect, or at least fear. But somewhere in building his empire of iron, he'd forgotten what it felt like to be human. What do you think of Zalika's art? Could a simple painting really change a man like Chimere? Drop a comment below and let us know what you think. And if you're enjoying this journey, hit that like button to show your support for stories that inspire change. His days followed a pattern. Predictable. Controlled. Meetings with lieutenants. Territory disputes. Approving operations. Denying mercy to those who failed him. He made life and death decisions like other men chose breakfast. A lieutenant pleaded. His crew had been hit, his supply line disrupted, his family threatened. Chimere listened without expression. One nod. The man was taken away. Problem solved. Next issue. At night, he returned to his penthouse, drank expensive whiskey, looked out at the city he controlled, felt nothing. That was the price of iron. You didn't bend, but you also didn't feel. And Chimere had convinced himself that was exactly how he wanted it. It was supposed to be routine. A meeting with suppliers in the port district. The fastest route took him through neighborhoods he normally avoided, not from fear but disgust. Poverty reminded him of weakness, of his past, of things he'd buried deep. Traffic forced a detour, down a street he'd never traveled. That's when he saw it. The painting. He told his driver to stop. Got out, something he never did in neighborhoods like this. His bodyguards tensed, confused. The iron didn't do spontaneous, didn't do curious. But Chimere walked toward the wall like a man in a trance. For the first time in 28 years he felt something. What was it about this painting? Chimere had seen art before. Expensive pieces in his penthouse. Gallery openings he attended for appearances. Classical works worth millions. But this was different. It wasn't polished. Wasn't perfect. The materials were garbage, crushed cans, charcoal, rust. The technique was amateur. By every objective measure, this art was worthless. So why couldn't he look away? The child in the painting, those eyes. He knew those eyes. He'd seen them in mirrors years ago, before he learned to kill what they showed. This was the look of someone still fighting, still hoping, still believing pain could create something beautiful. It was everything Chimere had trained himself to forget. Who made this? He asked a woman selling fruit nearby. She clutched her child closer, terrified. Nobody spoke to the iron unless spoken to. A girl, sir. An orphan. She paints sometimes. An orphan. Of course. Only someone with nothing could create something this honest. He tried to forget it. Went to his meeting. Made his deals. Returned to his routine. But the painting followed him. During meetings, he found himself sketching the image from memory. While reviewing ledgers, he saw those eyes. At night, lying alone in his king-sized bed, he saw that dying flower giving birth to stars. He returned. Not once. 7 times in 3 weeks. Always at night. Always alone. He made his driver wait blocks away. He stood in darkness, studying every brushstroke like a scholar with a sacred text. He began finding others. The neighborhood was full of her work. Each piece a window into suffering he'd spent decades learning to ignore. Each one cracking something inside him he thought was sealed forever. Finally, he made a call. Told his most trusted lieutenant to find out everything about this artist. Discreetly, he added, though he couldn't have explained why discretion mattered. His men learned her name. Zalika. 10 years old. Parents unknown. Likely dead or abandoned her. Lived on the streets for at least 3 years. Survived on scraps and kindness. Created art obsessively. They gave him photos. The girl working on her art. Sleeping in doorways. Begging for food. Evading gangs. She looked like a ghost. Barely there. As if the world was trying to erase her. But her art screamed existence. Chimere stared at her photo for an hour. This child had every reason to give up. To become bitter. To become hard. Instead she chose beauty. She chose creation over destruction. She chose everything he hadn't. What am I? He found himself thinking. I built an empire. I have power that crushes lives with a word. I survived by becoming iron. And this child with nothing has something I lost long ago. He told himself he was being foolish, sentimental, weak. These were the thoughts that got men in his position killed. Emotion was liability. Compassion was exploitation waiting to happen. But he made the call anyway. Find her. Bring her to me. Gently, don't scare her. Tell her someone wants to talk about her art. For the first time in decades, the iron was acting without a plan, without calculation, without certainty. He was acting on feeling, and it terrified him. Zalika was working on a new piece when they found her. Two men in expensive suits, completely out of place in her world. She knew danger when she saw it. Her first instinct was to bolt, but one held up his hands. Please don't be afraid. Someone wants to meet you. Someone who admires your art. Zalika had never heard those words before. Admires your art. They sounded foreign. Who? Her voice was small but steady. Someone important. He'll explain. We have a car waiting. You're not in trouble. We'll bring you back. You have my word. A stranger's word meant nothing on these streets. But curiosity, that dangerous, beautiful curiosity that made her an artist, won out. Okay, she whispered. The car was nicer than anything Zalika had ever seen. Leather seats. Air conditioning that made her shiver after constant heat. The city looked different through tinted windows, cleaner, farther away, less real. The men didn't speak. Didn't threaten. Just drove through neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier, until they reached a part of the city Zalika had only seen from a distance. The tall buildings. The clean streets. The places where people like her didn't exist. Her heart hammered. What had she agreed to? Underground garage. Elevator that made her ears pop. Hallways so quiet her breathing seemed loud. Then a door opened to an office that looked like it belonged in a movie. And there, standing by the window, was a man who looked like he could crush the world with a thought. Shamir turned when she entered. He'd rehearsed what to say for hours. Every word evaporated when he saw her. She was so small, so fragile. Clothes held together by hope. Bare dirty feet. Matted hair. But her eyes held universes. Zalika, he said, voice rougher than intended. Thank you for coming. She said nothing. Just watched him with eyes that had seen too much. I saw your art. The painting with the flower and the stars. Still nothing. But something flickered in her expression. Recognition. Pride maybe. It's beautiful. I've seen art worth millions. None of it touched me like yours did. Who are you? Zalika finally asked. Quiet but clear. No trembling. This child had courage. My name is Shamir. And I'm someone who forgot how to see beauty. Until I saw what you created. They sat. Shamir offered food. She was clearly starving but ate slowly, with dignity. He offered water. She drank like it was the first clean water in days. Probably was. Why do you paint? He asked. Zalika looked at him for a long moment. Because if I don't, I'll disappear. The world doesn't see me. But when I paint, I exist. Even if just for me. Something broke in Shamir's chest. Those words. That truth. I used to be like you. He heard himself say. Not exactly. But I grew up in streets like yours. Worse maybe. I had nothing. Was nothing. I decided I'd become someone no one could ignore. Did it work? Yes. I became powerful. Feared. Wealthy beyond imagination. Everything I thought I wanted. Zalika tilted her head, studying him with unsettling perception. But you're here. Talking to me. Looking at my paintings. Why? Because. Shamir struggled. Because your art made me feel something I haven't felt in decades. And I don't even know what to call it. Maybe you felt alive, Zalika said simply. That's what art does. It reminds us we're alive. Shamir's world is changing. But can he truly leave behind his violent past? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Comment below and share your thoughts on whether it's possible to change after everything. And don't forget, subscribe for more powerful stories about redemption and transformation. I can help you, Shamir said suddenly. Money, a home, school, art supplies, everything you need. You'd never sleep in doorways again. Never beg for food. You could focus on your art. He expected gratitude, relief, joy. Instead, Zalika's expression became cautious. What would you want in return? Nothing. I just want to help. Nobody with power helps without wanting something. Her eyes were old beyond their years. What do you really want? Her directness unsettled him. She was right. In his world, everything was transaction. I want. He struggled. I want to believe I can be something other than what I've become. I want to believe that if I help you, maybe I'm not completely lost. Maybe there's still something human in me. Zalika studied him, then shook her head. I don't want your money. Shamir was stunned. What? If you give me everything, I'll become comfortable. I'll forget why I paint. My art comes from this. She gestured around to the struggle, the pain, the rawness of her existence. If you take that away, you take away what makes it real. But you're suffering, Shamir protested. You're a child. I'm not suffering for my art. I'm surviving through it. There's a difference. Shamir felt like he was the child and she was the adult. Then what can I do? He was almost pleading. Let me do something. Please. Zalika thought. Supplies. Better supplies. And maybe. Sometimes you can come see my work. Really see it. Not just look but understand. Because I think you understand now. That's all. That's everything. Art supplies and someone who sees. That's more than I've ever had. It felt insufficient. But perhaps his instinct to solve everything with money and power was part of his problem. Okay, he agreed. Supplies. And I'll visit. Whenever you'll let me. Then we have a deal, Zalika said. And she smiled the first time he'd seen it. It was like sunrise. Shamir kept his word. Within days, Zalika had supplies. Real canvas. Professional paints. Brushes that didn't fall apart. He visited at dusk when his business was done. Sat on a broken crate while she painted. They didn't always talk. Sometimes silence was enough. Watching her create was like watching magic. She approached each piece with intensity that blocked out everything else. You paint like your life depends on it, he observed once. Because it does. His lieutenants noticed. The iron was acting strange. Disappearing in evenings. Seeming distracted in meetings. Boss, is everything all right? Better than it's been in years, Shamir answered, surprising himself with the truth. He started seeing things differently. When discussing a protection racket targeting street vendors, he thought of the woman who gave Zalika fruit. When planning territorial expansion that would displace a neighborhood, he thought of where Zalika painted. His decisions began to change. Subtle at first, then more pronounced. Not everyone appreciated the changes. Shamir's empire was built on ruthlessness. Softness was dangerous. You're being too lenient. His second-in-command, Obi, warned. People are noticing. They're wondering if the iron is losing his edge. Let them wonder. Boss, that's not how this works. We rule through fear. If they stop fearing you, we're finished. Obi had been with Shamir for 15 years. Fought beside him. Bled for him. But Obi had also never questioned the iron path. To him, power was everything. Compassion was weakness. Change was death. Shamir wanted to argue. But he knew Obi was right about one thing. His world didn't allow for compassion. You were either iron or you were dead. But he also knew he couldn't go back to being the man he was. Zalika's art had cracked something open, and he couldn't seal it shut. He was caught between two worlds, both demanding he choose. The crisis came suddenly. A rival gang made a bold move on Shamir's territory. Aggressive. Direct. A challenge to his authority. The old Shamir would have responded with overwhelming violence. Crushed them completely. Made an example so brutal no one would dare challenge him again. His lieutenants expected this. Demanded it. We hit them tonight, Obi commanded. We hit them so hard they remember it for generations. Shamir looked at the battle plan. Efficient. Brutal. Effective. It would secure his power. Shore up his reputation. Remind everyone why he was called the Iron. It would also kill innocent people. The rival gang operated out of a neighborhood. Families lived there. Children. Maybe even artists like Zalika. For the first time in his life, Shamir hesitated. Boss. Obi pressed. We need to move. Now. Shamir thought of Zalika. Of her paintings. of flowers growing through iron, of choosing to create instead of destroy. No, he said quietly. What? I said no. We don't hit them. We negotiate. The room exploded in protest. This is weakness. Obi shouted. This is how empires fall. This is how we stop being monsters, Chimere shot back. We are monsters. That's the point. That's what keeps us alive. Then maybe it's time to try being something else. Obi stared at him like he was looking at a stranger. What happened to you? I woke up. I remembered what it's like to be human. Human gets you killed in this world. Then maybe this world needs to change. Obi's expression hardened. In that moment, Chimere saw it. The decision forming behind his lieutenant's eyes. The calculation. The betrayal taking root. But Chimere didn't bend. We negotiate. Or you find a new boss. The room went silent. Obi walked out without another word. The stakes have never been higher. Will Chimere's transformation succeed? Or will his past come back to haunt him? If you're invested in this story, make sure to subscribe and follow along. You don't want to miss how this unfolds. The negotiation was tense. The rival leader, a man named Iko, came expecting war. Instead, he found the Iron offering peace. What's your angle? Iko demanded. The Iron doesn't negotiate. No angle. I'm offering you the Eastern District. In exchange, you leave the southern neighborhoods alone. No violence. No civilian casualties. Fair territory division. Fair? Since when do you care about fair? Since I remembered what it's like to be human. Silence. A child taught me something, Chimere continued. She has nothing. Lives on streets we fight over. She creates beauty instead of destruction. I built an empire on fear. And I'm empty. Completely empty. Maybe it's time to try something different. Iko studied him. I heard rumors you'd gone soft. The Iron, changed by some street kids' paintings? Seemed impossible. Do we have a deal or not? Let me see them. The paintings. I want to see what's worth risking an empire for. Chimere took Iko to Zalika's neighborhood. Showed him the murals. The dying flower giving birth to stars. The Iron Man with flowers growing through cracks. Iko stood silently. Finally, my daughter draws. She's 8. Draws on whatever she can find. I never paid attention. Too busy building power. Too busy fighting men like you. Maybe we've both been fighting the wrong wars. They didn't become friends. But they became something unexpected, partners in trying to be better. The deal was struck. Territory divided fairly. Protection money reduced. Neighborhoods with families were off limits. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't peace. But it was different. Chimere's organization was furious. Half his lieutenants threatened to leave. Some did. But others stayed. Some admitted they were tired. Tired of violence. Tired of fear. Tired of being Iron. What you're doing is dangerous, his most loyal lieutenant said. But maybe it's also brave. Or maybe it's just finally being honest. But Obi wasn't done. He'd been with Chimere for 15 years. Built his life around the Iron's empire. Watched it become the most feared organization in West Africa. And now Chimere was throwing it away. For what? A child's paintings? Obi had lost his own sister years ago. Killed in crossfire when she was 12. That loss had hardened him. Taught him that softness was death. That you survive by being harder than everyone else. Chimere's transformation felt like a betrayal of everything they'd built. Everything they bled for. If Chimere wouldn't protect the empire, Obi would. Even if that meant protecting it from Chimere himself. He gathered loyalists. Those who believed in the old ways. Who saw Chimere's changes as weakness. We take back what's ours, Obi told them. Starting with eliminating his distraction. One evening as Zalika painted, Obi's men surrounded her. She tried to run. Too many. The boss wants you to know something, one said, grabbing her arm. Everything you love can be taken away. And the Iron? He's not Iron anymore. He's weak. And weakness gets people killed. They smashed her paintings. Destroyed her supplies. Broke her brushes. Tore her canvases. Zalika screamed. Not from fear. From rage. From grief. They were destroying her voice. Her existence. Her proof that she mattered. When they finished, they left her there among the ruins. Crying, but alive. Tell Chimir, one said as they left. This is what happens when iron turns soft. When Chimir heard what happened, something ancient and dark rose inside him. The old iron. The monster he'd been fighting to bury. He knew where Obi operated. He gathered his most loyal fighters. Loaded weapons. Prepared for war. His hands shook. Not from fear, but from rage so pure it felt like fire in his veins. Boss, his lieutenant said carefully. If you do this, everything changes. All the progress. All the growth. Gone. They hurt her, Chimir growled. They destroyed her art. I know. And we'll handle it. But if you go in there like the iron, you become the iron again. Is that what Zalika would want? The question stopped him cold. What would Zalika want? He forced himself to think. To remember flowers growing through cracks. What would she want? He asked quietly. She'd want you to be better than Obi. Better than revenge. Better than iron. Chimir went to Zalika instead. Found her sitting among the ruins of her art, crying silently. I'll kill them, he said. Every one of them. No, Zalika interrupted, voice hoarse but firm. What? No killing. No revenge. That's not who you're trying to be. But they hurt you. They destroyed. They destroyed things. Things can be replaced. She looked up at him, tears still streaming. If you kill them, you destroy yourself. You become what you were. Then they win anyway. Chimir knelt beside her. Then what do I do? I can't just let this go. You protect me. You help me rebuild. You show me that creation is still stronger than destruction. Her voice broke. But you can't become a monster to fight monsters. That's not how this works. It's the only language they understand. Then teach them a new language. That's what art does. It creates new possibilities. Shows new ways. She was 10 years old. And she was right. Chimir made calls. Not to hitmen. To builders. He had walls reinforced around Zalika's painting areas. Hired protection. People who would keep her safe without violence. He went to Obi. Personally. Alone. Unarmed. Walking into that room was the bravest thing he'd ever done. Braver than any battle. Because he was choosing to be vulnerable in a world that killed vulnerability. Obi sat surrounded by his new crew. Armed. Dangerous. Expecting war. Instead, Chimir offered peace. What do you want? Obi demanded. I want you to leave her alone. She's a child. Not part of our world. Not part of our war. She made herself part of it by changing you. Then be angry at me. Come after me. But leave her out of it. Why should I? Obi's voice was cold. Because despite everything, I remember when you had a code. When you believed in something beyond money and power. Chimir paused. You had a sister, Obi. She was killed in crossfire when she was 12. You remember. Obi's face hardened. Don't talk about her. Zalika is someone's daughter. Even if her parents are gone, she belongs to someone. When you hurt her, you become the people who killed your sister. Is that who you want to be? The question hung in the air. Obi said nothing for a long time. The room was tense. His crew waited for orders. Finally, my sister painted too. Did you know that? Obi's voice was rough. Little watercolors. Flowers and birds. I threw them away after she died. Couldn't stand looking at them. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you just saying what you need to? I'm sorry, Chimir repeated. For your sister. For every child we've hurt with our wars. For every family destroyed because we chose power over humanity. I'm sorry, Obi. And I'm trying to be better. The girl will be safe, Obi said finally. You have my word. But you and me? We're not done. I know. You're tearing apart everything we built. The empire is fracturing. Our enemies smell weakness. This peace you're trying to build? It won't last. Someone will test it. Someone will break it. And when they do, people will die. Maybe more than if you just stayed iron. It was Chimir's greatest fear spoken aloud. Maybe you're right, Chimir admitted. Maybe my attempt to change will cause more harm than good. Maybe I'm being selfish, trying to redeem myself at others' expense. Then why do it? Because I have to try. Because if I don't, I'm already dead inside. And maybe that's worse than being dead for real. Obi stood. Walked to face Chimere directly. You want to know what I think? I think you're a fool. I think you're going to get yourself killed. And I think. He paused. I think part of me wishes I had your courage. He extended his hand. The girl is safe. But I'm done with your empire. I'm taking my crew. We'll stay out of your territories. You stay out of ours. Chimere took his hand. Deal. As Obi turned to leave, he stopped. For what it's worth. Your change did one thing. It made me remember my sister's paintings. Maybe I'll go look for them. See if I kept any after all. Zalika rebuilt her art. New supplies. New canvases. But she insisted on keeping the broken pieces. Why? Chimere asked. Because they tell a story too. They show that beauty can be attacked but not destroyed. That art survives. That I survive. She incorporated the broken pieces into a new work. Shattered canvas fragments became mosaic. Torn paintings became collage. Broken brushes became sculpture. The piece was called Persistence. It showed a garden growing through rubble. Flowers emerging from destruction. Beauty refusing to die. When it was complete, people came from across the city to see it. Not just from the slums but from wealthy districts too. They stood silently before it, seeing their own struggles reflected back. Art, it turned out, spoke to everyone. Rich and poor. Powerful and powerless. It reminded them all of their shared humanity. Chimire's empire continued to shrink. More lieutenants left. More territory was lost. By traditional measures, he was failing. But something else was growing. Respect, not fear. Loyalty, not obedience. Purpose, not just power. The people in the neighborhoods he controlled noticed changes. Less violence. Fairer protection fees. Actual protection, not just extortion. Business owners approached him with problems, expecting solutions, not threats. Families asked for help settling disputes. The community began seeing him as something other than a predator. It was strange. Uncomfortable. He didn't know how to be this person. But Zalika guided him. Showed him that leadership could be service. That strength could be gentleness. That power could protect instead of destroy. You're not iron anymore, she told him one day. You're becoming something better. What am I becoming? Human. Just human. The changes had unexpected consequences. Other organizations noticed. Some mocked him. Others were curious. A young gang leader approached him. I heard what you did with Eco. The negotiation instead of war. My crew thinks I'm crazy, but I'm tired. Tired of funerals. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Is there really another way? Chimere looked at this young man, barely 20, already drowning in violence. I don't know if there's another way, Chimere admitted. But the old way was killing me from the inside. At least this way I'm still alive. Still feeling. Still trying. Word spread. Not everyone listened. But some did. Violence didn't end. Suffering didn't disappear. But cracks formed. Flowers started growing. A neighborhood that had seen monthly gang shootings went 3 months without one. A street vendor association formed, pooling resources for protection instead of paying multiple gangs. Children started painting on walls without fear of retaliation. Small changes, but real. But Obi had been right about one thing. The peace was fragile. A rival organization from outside the city saw the changes as weakness. They moved in aggressively, targeting Chimire's reduced territories. People were hurt. 3 business owners beaten for refusing new protection. A community center burned. 2 young men killed in crossfire. Chimire's remaining lieutenants came to him. We need to respond. Hard. Or this spreads. Chimere felt the old pull. The simplicity of violence. The clarity of fear. But he also saw Zalika's painting. Persistence. Beauty growing through rubble. We respond, he said. But smart. We protect our people. We defend. But we don't escalate. We show them that our neighborhoods are protected because the communities protect them. Not because we terrorize better than the next gang. It was harder than the old way. More complicated. More risk. But it was right. They fortified neighborhoods. Trained community watch groups. made protection visible and real, not just threatened. Worked with, not against, the people they claimed to protect. The rival organization tested them, found resistance they didn't expect. Not from feared enforcers, but from organized communities who refused to be victimized. Slowly, the rivals pulled back. Not from fear of Chimere, but from lack of opportunity. 6 months after that first encounter, the neighborhood where Zalika painted had transformed. Not into wealth. Poverty doesn't disappear with wishes, but into something more important. Hope. Zalika's art covered dozens of walls. Each piece told stories of struggle and survival, pain and persistence, death and rebirth. Children came to watch her work. Adults brought materials. The community protected her art like sacred ground. Other children started painting. Inspired by Zalika, they took up brushes and chalk. The neighborhood became a gallery. Every wall told stories. Young men who would have joined gangs joined art collectives instead. Not all of them. Not even most. But some. And some was more than none. But change always has a cost. Chimere's empire was a fraction of its former size. His wealth had diminished, much of it now funding community programs, art supplies, neighborhood protection. He'd made enemies. Some of his former allies now wanted him dead. Saw him as a traitor to their way of life. He'd lost people he cared about. Lieutenants who chose the old ways over the new. Friends who couldn't accept his transformation. One night, sitting among the ruins of what was once his empire, Chimere felt the weight of it all. Was it worth it? He asked Zalika, who was painting nearby. She stopped. Looked at him. Do you feel alive? Yes. More than I have in decades. Do you believe what you're doing is right? Yes. Even when it's hard. Even when I fail. Then it's worth it. She returned to her painting. Worth isn't measured in what you keep. It's measured in who you become. Zalika's dream of a school was becoming real. Not grand. Not perfect. But real. An abandoned warehouse transformed. Art supplies donated by community members and funded by Chimere's increasingly legitimate businesses. Local artists volunteering as teachers. Children gathering after school to create, express, exist. At the opening, Zalika stood before the community. Still small. Still just 11 now. But her voice was strong. This space is for anyone who needs to speak but can't find words. For anyone who needs to exist but feels invisible. For anyone who needs to create because destruction is all they've known. She looked at Chimere standing in the back. Someone once told me that even iron can grow flowers if you water them. This school is proof. We are the flowers. We are growing. And we refuse to die. The community applauded. Not politely. With genuine emotion. Chimere felt tears. Something he hadn't experienced since he was 15. Since he'd decided never to feel again. But the greatest test came unexpectedly. A former rival, someone Chimere had wronged badly in his iron days, found him alone one night. Armed. Angry. Justified in his rage. You destroyed my family, the man said, gun trembling in his hand. My brother. My livelihood. Everything. Chimere didn't run. Didn't call for help. Just stood there. You're right, he said quietly. I did. And nothing I do now can undo that. Nothing I say can bring back what you lost. Then why shouldn't I kill you? You should. By every measure of justice you should. I've earned this bullet 1,000 times over. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. But, Chimere continued, if you kill me, what changes? Does your brother come back? Does your pain end? Or do you just become another person carrying death inside them? You don't get to lecture me about death. You are death. I am. I'm trying to be something else. Not for redemption, I don't deserve that. But because continuing to be death makes the world worse. And I'm tired of making the world worse. They stood in silence. There's a school, Chimere said. For kids like I was. Like maybe your brother was. It teaches art instead of violence. Creation instead of destruction. It doesn't fix what I broke. Nothing can. But it might prevent some future breaking. You think that makes us even? No. We'll never be even. But maybe it's a start towards something different. Maybe we can both choose to create more than we destroy, going forward. The man stood there for a long time. Gun pointed. Finger on trigger. Then slowly he lowered it. "I'm not doing this for you," he said. "I'm doing it because my brother wouldn't want me to become what you were. He believed in better." He walked away, leaving Chimir standing there, alive, trembling, grateful. 1 year after that first encounter with Zalika's painting, Chimir sat in the art school, watching children create. His empire was gone. What remained was small, mostly legitimate, barely profitable. He'd lost everything that once defined him. And he'd never been happier. Not because he was redeemed, he wasn't. Not because his past was erased, it wasn't. Not because he'd become good. He hadn't. But because he was trying. Every day. To be better than he was yesterday. Some days he succeeded. Some days he failed. Some days the old iron whispered in his ear, promising that power and fear were simpler, easier, more effective. But then he'd watch Zalika paint. Or he'd see a child discover that they could create beauty. Or he'd witness a community protecting itself not through violence but through connection. And he'd remember why he was trying. "Are you happy?" Zalika asked him one evening, the same question from months ago. This time Chimir had an answer. "I don't know if I know what happy means. I'm not comfortable. I'm not secure. I have less than I've ever had. More enemies. More risk. More uncertainty. That doesn't sound like happiness." "But," Chimir continued, "for the first time in decades I matter. Not because people fear me, but because I'm trying to help. Not because I have power, but because I'm using what I have left for something beyond myself. That's not happiness exactly. But it's alive," Zalika finished. "You're alive." "I'm alive," Chimir agreed. "I forgot what that felt like. Forgot that being alive meant feeling even the painful feelings. Especially the painful feelings." Zalika smiled. "That's what art teaches. It's not about comfort. It's about being awake. Feeling. Creating. Trying. When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just finally learned to listen." This is the story of Zalika and Chimir. The orphan and the iron. The artist and the monster. The creator and the destroyer. But really it's a story about all of us. We all have iron inside us. Hard parts. Cold parts. Parts that want to shut down to stop hurting. We all have flowers too. Beautiful parts. Creative parts. Parts that want to grow and connect. The question isn't whether we have both. We all do. The question is which we nurture. Zalika chose flowers even when she had every reason to choose iron. Even when the world gave her only pain, she gave it beauty. Chimir chose iron for decades, built an empire on it, convinced himself it was strength. Then a child showed him that real strength is staying soft in a hard world. That real power is creation, not destruction. Their story didn't end with Chimir becoming good. You can't erase decades of violence with months of trying. Redemption doesn't work that way. But it did end with him trying. Choosing. Watering those flowers every single day. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Can art really change the toughest of hearts? Maybe. Maybe not. Art didn't change Chimir. Chimir chose to change himself. But art showed him it was possible. Gave him a reason. A path. A guide. Zalika's paintings were mirrors. They reflected back what Chimir had lost. What he could become. What he was choosing between every single day. And maybe that's what art does. It doesn't force change. It reveals possibility, shows us who we are and who we could be, then leaves the choice to us. Some choose iron. Some choose flowers. Some, like Chimir, choose to be both. To carry their violence while growing their beauty. To acknowledge their past while creating their future. It's messy. It's imperfect. It's human. Can art really awaken hearts that have turned to iron? Can people truly change? Or are we trapped by what we've been? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me about a time when art or beauty or creation changed something in you. Reminded you of who you wanted to be. Have you ever made a choice to change, even when everything around you said it was impossible? Have you ever seen someone transform against all odds? Tell us your story. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that change is possible even in the darkest places, hit that subscribe button. Join us for more stories about the human struggle to be better than we are. Because that's what we all are, really. Not heroes or villains. Just humans. Trying. Failing. Trying again. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear that change is possible. Comment if this story touched something in you. And sometimes, if we're lucky, growing flowers through the cracks in our iron souls. Thank you for staying with us for this entire journey. Your time matters, and I'm honored you spent it here. Until next time, keep creating. Keep trying. Keep watering those flowers. They're stronger than they look. And so are you.